this is Yoda from Team Loaded, bringing you another video with nerdstomper.com. This video is going to be the first in a three-part series on Valkyrie, and it's going to cover the general strategy for Valkyrie, as well as item builds and skill builds. The next couple videos are going to be commented play. The second video is going to be commented play of the early game, and the third video is going to be the mid to late game. One of the primary reasons people like to play Valkyrie is that she has a kind of blink kind of skill in her leap, and she also has a lot of good late game potential as a ranged agility hero. And on top of that, she also has a lot of burst damage early with her arrow and her Call of the Valkyrie. Also, her arrow has a lot of potential to be an extremely powerful spell with stun up to 5 seconds. So all these factors together, on top of her ultimate being possibly an extremely good team fighting tool, make Valkyrie an extremely powerful hero. As well, also she has pretty long range, which make her a viable hero to go 1v2, as well as a decent harasser in the solo lane. With Valkyrie, generally you're going to want to... Actually, Valkyrie can really go to any lane. She can dual lane just fine, and she also solo is fine. So really any lane is fine, even soloing the bad lane, like for instance on Hellborn that's the bottom lane, and on the Legion that's the top lane. Valkyrie can still solo. Well, I don't want to say she's just fine, since there are some lane combinations that will make things pretty miserable for her. But she's one of the best suited for that, for soloing in that lane, because she has a pretty long range and relatively high base damage, as well as an escape ability. So if your team wants to try lane in the good lane and make sure that your lane really dominates, then Valkyrie is a fine hero, or a great hero even, to put in the other lane to suffer in a 1v2 in the bad lane. For starting items on Valkyrie, generally I like to get my standard agility hero starting items, which is 2 duck boots, 2 minor totems, a Runes of the Blight, and 1 health potion. Again, this is because it gives her a higher amount of the highest possible base damage early, while still having some regeneration. With Valkyrie, if you're going to 1v2, then that's probably not going to be enough regeneration for you. So you probably want to just start with two minor totems, two sets of runes, a flask, and maybe even a mana battery. If you see the lane you're going against is going to spam. If you decide that you aren't going to need the mana battery after all, then you can get a Circlet of Nobility. In this game it's called Pretender's Crown, +2 all stats. In the lane, you're really going to try to harass a lot, since you have long range and relatively high base damage. So make sure you're harassing a lot, and basically if there's not a creep that's about to be last hittable, then you should be looking to harass and stay at maximum range from the other heroes in the lane. Since if you are at your maximum range, then most likely you'll be able to hit them and they won't be able to hit you, which is how you take advantage of Valkyrie's max high range. Generally in the lane, you're not going to want to shoot arrows or javelin of lights while the other team is able to see you, since the arrow moves relatively slow in Heroes of the Earth and is pretty easy to dodge. So the only time you want to shoot an arrow is when you're not in vision, because then you'll give the other team less time to react, and which means that the arrow is more likely to hit. You can also shoot arrows when your allies are stunning them or setting up stuns for you. For instance, if you're almost in position to hit an arrow, and then Behemoth or Magnus comes and lands a setup stun, then that's another good time to hit an arrow. Also, you're going to want to try to hit your Call of the Valkyrie as a double hit, so you also always want to be right next to an enemy hero when you use it, even though that may put your life in danger. So make sure you weigh the risks and rewards of that. Also, don't be afraid to shoot like short arrows. Like if there's an enemy at point blank range, then oftentimes hitting them with an arrow for a 0.5 second stun will be just enough to put you over the edge to beat them in the fight. So that's that for laning strategy. As far as your item selection is concerned, obviously you're going to want a bottle and marchers, just like pretty much every other hero in Heroes of New Earth wants. And then you have an interesting decision for what kind of upgraded marchers you're going to get. It's pretty much you don't really want to get Striders, since Valkyrie's not really like the roaming type of hero. If you want to roam with Valkyrie, like with level 1 trying to hit a lot of arrows, then you can go for Striders, but that's not the kind of Valkyrie I approve of, so I probably wouldn't recommend going Striders. I also wouldn't recommend buying enhanced marchers, since the extra move speed is a little bit wasted on Valkyrie, since you have the leap already. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend getting post haste most of the time either, since obviously this is for the same reason that I wouldn't recommend getting enhanced marchers, is that because with her leap, the extra move speed is oftentimes put to waste. So the only option that leaves us with really is Steam Boots, which I like a lot, since Steam Boots, obviously your hero is looking for some extra attack speed for the late game, and Steam Boots is definitely providing you with that. On top of that, Steam Boots has great synergy with Bottle, since you're able to get extra value out of your bottle by switching your Steam Boots to agility before using it. Even more than that, in the early game, oftentimes you're going to want some extra HP or extra mana to either survive their burst damage or use your burst spells. And Steam Boots can provide you with all of that, while still providing you with some late game attack speed, since Steam Boots is a malleable item. Now that we've decided we're going Steam Boots, you have another choice between Power Source or no Power Source. Personally, I prefer to get Power Source and then play more of a ganking kind of Valkyrie, so Power Source gets a lot of value there. But if you don't see yourself being in a lot of early fights, because for some reason the game turns out to be like a farm fest or something, then you can skimp out on Power Source, since obviously it won't be getting much value there. After you get Power Source or not, then your next item is probably going to want to be a Firebrand on your way to the Geometer's Bane. This is because Geometer's Bane is currently, I think, the best item in Heroes of Newerth for ranged agility heroes, since it gives you, it just pretty much does everything for you. It gives you extra hit points, so you're able to survive the early burst. Gives you, I think it gives you the most damage based on like your images doing like 30% damage, which is quite a bit. And it also gives you a pretty good boost in survivability, since not only does it give you that extra HP, making images of yourself also makes you harder to focus. So anyway, you're going to want Geometer's Bane most games. It's possible that you could want a Nullstone as your first item instead of Geometer's Bane, but it's going to be pretty rare games. Like, you want a Nullstone if the other team had a lot of heroes that depended on burst damage. Like, for instance, if their team was like Pebbles, Pyromancer, Dr. Repulsor, and Thunderbringer, and another hero, then you'd probably want to get Nullstone so you don't just die to the onslaught. But most of the games you're going to want to be going for Geometer's Bane. Once you finish Geometer's Bane, you pretty much have a choice between Savage Mace and Frostwolf Skull, or Whispering Helm. You're going to want Savage Mace if you're looking to do some extra damage. If you find yourself in team fights unable to contribute as much as you'd like to, you're going to want Frostwolf Skull if you need a little more survivability, and also if you're having trouble chasing down the enemy heroes, or if the other team has heroes with some kind of magic immunity like Swiftblade, Predator, or heroes with Shrunken Head, since Frostwolf Skull is particularly effective against those. And you're going to want Whispering Helm if you're having trouble like staying in fights, like staying with HP. For instance, if you get fought down to like 300 HP in the middle of a fight, and then you just have trouble contributing to the rest of the fight because you're so low on HP, then Whispering Helm is definitely a good option for you. The other time you're going to want to get Whispering Helm is if the other team has a lot of like melee physical damage heroes, such as Predator, Magebane, Dark Lady, or other heroes like that, since with Whispering Helm you can recruit a Frost Ogre, and the Frost Ogre will give you his armor buff, which is extremely powerful against melee DPS heroes. From there, your choices are pretty much any of those items I stated before, and also you can get Wingbow or Rift Shards if you feel like the game's going super long. Obviously you want Wingbow if you feel like you need to be dodging attacks, and you want Rift Shards if you feel like you already have a lot of damage, and adding crits will give you more damage. Basically, you don't want to buy Wingbow or Rift Shards as your second big item, since those two items will have poor stacking or stack well as the game goes on, and are poor like in the mid game. They're super good super late game items, since Wingbow gives you something like attack speed, and Rift Shards gives you crits, which are multipliers and not additives. And early on you want additives such as like Savage Mace, and later on you want multipliers. The reason for that obviously is that multiplying a bigger number is better than adding to a bigger number, but multiplying a smaller number is worse than adding to a smaller number. So anyway, once again, that's Bottle to Marchers to Steam Boots to Power Source if you want it, into Firebrand and Geometer's Bane, and then Savage Mace, Frostwolf Skull, or Whispering Helm.
and then Satanic, any of the items I mentioned before, Wingbow, or Rift Shards. So that's that for items. The next thing we'll talk about is Valkyrie skill build. So obviously at level 1, you're going to want to hold your skill point because you could either want to use arrow to, or by arrow I mean javelin of light, so arrow to land a good first blood, or you could use leap to escape from getting first blood. Chances are you'll be able to determine whether or not which skill you're going to want to get at level 1 pretty early on. If you just end up in your lane by yourself, then you probably just should get leap just in case. If you don't have time, if you don't think you're gonna have time later to skill the point. So levels 1 and 2 you're gonna want leap and arrow, and then levels 3, 4, and 5 you're gonna want Call of the Valkyrie, and then level 6 get arrow again, 7 Call of the Valkyrie, and then max out your arrow. Once your arrow is maxed out, get a point in your ultimate. The reason for this is that Call of the Valkyrie is definitely the skill you want to be having. Your skill you're probably going to use most often since it's a reliable nuke, unlike your second skill, which is more of a skill shot. And that means that you'd much rather be able to finish someone off with that nuke than with a skill shot nuke, since 100% hit. Leveling it over your arrow also means that your burst damage is higher than if you leveled arrow, since 2 hits of your Call of the Valkyrie is going to be is gonna matter. It's gonna matter more if you level your Call of the Valkyrie, since that hits twice and your only hits once. Anyway, the reason you would get the reason I like to get my arrow at level 6 instead of the ultimate is that I find that the extra burst damage is much more useful early than having your ultimate that could potentially be used to sneak up on someone, but is actually kind of impractical, especially when your arrow is not doing enough damage. So I would max the arrow before getting a point in the ultimate, but it is decent to use early to mid game though. So definitely scale it before you get points in leap. So once you've got full points in both of your nukes, then scale your ultimate over leap, and finish off leap before attribute bonus, and then just get attribute bonus. I know I mentioned earlier that leap isn't the best skill to level up, since level 1 it already gives you like the leap effect, and leveling it up isn't that good. But it's better than attribute bonus since it lowers the cooldown, and it also gives you, I guess I'm just going to say what it does. It lowers the cooldown, and it also gives you some more range and more attack speed. And I think that's worth more than +2 all stats. Oh, and the cooldown goes down. I think at level 4 leap you can generally use twice in a fight if the fight goes pretty long, and level 1 leap is almost always going to be only used once. So on the Valkyrie's counters, basically her counters are really heroes that stop her from being so mobile with her leap. So heroes like Bloodhunter, Puppet Master, Witch Slayer, and Polywog Priest. In addition, if there's a Valkyrie on the other team, you should probably make sure to get Dust of Revelation or Ward of Revelation. Like a lot of other range agility heroes, there's a lot of aspects to Valkyrie's game, like her early game burst damage as well as her late game farm potential. And she's a pretty flexible hero, so no hero really hard counters her. But the only thing I can say for sure is definitely have some detection if the Valkyrie in the mid game if there's a Valkyrie on the other team. With Valkyrie, generally in the early game, you're going to want to stay in your lane and get last hits and harass a lot. But if your lane isn't going so well, then Valkyrie can also be played as a roaming hero just fine. Generally, you're going to want to obviously use your arrow to great effect if you're roaming. Basically, what you want to do is try to predict. Like when people last hit, they generally have like a predictable pattern of movement that they go through, and with arrow, you want to just predict it and then make it so your arrow's going to land in their pattern. So they're going to have to adjust if they don't get hit, and most people won't adjust in time and will get hit by a long stun arrow. So basically, if you decide that you want to be ganking, then make sure you try to hit your arrow shoot it from out of vision. Otherwise, they're going to be extremely easy to dodge. If you assess that you probably won't need an arrow, then it's better if you don't have to use it, since if the other player is playing like correctly or in an alert way, then they're almost never going to get hit by an arrow that isn't set up by stun. So when possible, try to get kills with just your leap and your Call of the Valkyrie, but obviously sometimes that doesn't happen and you have to go for an arrow. Generally, you're going to want to be efficient with what you do. Valkyrie is a semi-carry hero, not a hard farmer, and also not a hard ganker. So make sure that whatever you do, you're just doing efficient. Like, don't sit in a lane just waiting for wave after wave farming, but also don't only gank. You definitely have to pick up some items for the late game. Cool tricks you can try to pull off with Valkyrie are with your ultimate. You should
you could use it to try to sneak into a good position against enemy heroes in team fights. So if they're not expecting it and they're not prepared with detection, then your ultimate can set up some really sweet team fights. Like, for instance, if obviously they're not expecting you, just use your ultimate, and then your whole team just walks next to them, and then you all get your spells off before they do, and they're all dead. Also, your leap disjoints as when you take off. So you see a projectile coming at you that you could potentially dodge. Just make sure you press E at the right time, and you'll dodge it. For a good example of that is Flint Beastwood's ultimate, since it has a pretty long travel time considering the range. So I mean, the projectile moves fast, but the projectile's but it's also in the air for a long time, since he usually shoots it at a super long range. So if you see it get launched, then just press E and you'll probably disjoint it. There are other there's a lot more to playing Valkyrie than obviously what I've listed here in this video, and the only real way to show it is basically in-game play. So that's going to be what the next two videos are, commentated in-game gameplay, and the next video is going to be on the early game, and the video after that's going to be the mid to late game. So once again, this is Yoda from Team Loaded, bringing you this video with nerdstomper.com, and this is the first in a three-part series on Valkyrie. Thanks for watching.